one of the points that I really wanted to hit home was some of our numbers that we use, and I mentioned the unemployment rate as the first one, but a lot of the numbers that we use to track our economy are they're not really accurate, and they don't really depict what we want them to predict. So
plus they're old.
They're old, right? So like GDP doesn't really tell us much about standard of living, even though that's the number or GDP per capita is the number that's thrown out as the standard of living metric. It's like a nice bottom line that everybody can look to, but it's an inaccurate representation. And then there's like people will throw out the S&P 500 or the Dow Jones Industrial Average or the unemployment rate, but they don't really tell us about the lives and when the lives of the people. And when governments live or die by these numbers, it can lead you astray. Like, so for instance, Andrew Yang will give the example of his wife who chose to stay at home with their children as opposed to continuing her career. So if we look at a number like GDP, the market would value that shift negatively. It would actually decrease the GDP because she's not participating in the workforce, even though the value that she's providing, spending time with children, like reading to them, like all the things that you do with children, that has much more value than any value that she's going to add in a company. But the GDP number doesn't accurately represent that value. And so when you said over the past, sorry, go ahead.
No, I would say to back you up on your GDP, like even the GDP to use as lifestyle or quality of life is not sufficient, but even to measure our own country. Like if you look at what is being measured, the United States has changed. I don't want to use the word evolve because evolve would mean it has changed into more of a service economy, right? Mm-hmm. And so we're not manufacturing as much things as we were 50 years ago. So at least as far as a percentage of our GDP. And so what they use to measure that is not an accurate reflection of what the United States is actually doing right now.
Right. And then so we spout off the number that GDP rises however much a year, and we celebrate that number. But over the past couple of years, while GDP is up, excluding this year is an outlier. I think we can comfortably omit this year and some of the macroeconomic data because of the anomalies. But like even though these numbers would reflect the fact that it's likely that automation and AI are going to accelerate because of COVID and not decrease, but that's a separate point. So while GDP has risen, suicides have also risen, drug overdoses have risen, and life expectancy is actually down for the first time in over 100 years. So like as Crosby Advisory, like if the number that we chose to follow was like our Twitter followers, right? That's the only number we cared about. That's the number that got reported. And we didn't care about like the performance of the accounts, customer service, client acquisition. All we cared about was Twitter followers. We would be going in a really bad direction. And like it's the same thing for macroeconomic data. Like our data sucks, and we kind of need to shift the paradigm and collect macroeconomic numbers that so we can shoot for goals that actually would matter and tell us how we're doing as a society. And then like numbers like physical and mental health, freedom from substance, clean air, clean water, and then GDP could be a sliver of that, but it wouldn't be the whole enchilada. Yeah.
Okay, I'm in agreement with you with that we do need better numbers, and the data that we're using is outdated in the sense that it does no longer reflect accurately what our country is.
Right.